speaking of being steered on the right course, I would like to introduce the person whose job it is to steer the Mass GOP on the right course.
Who's at the helm?
It is Kirsten Hughes. Kirsten, great to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, guys.
Well, first, I want to, before
and Happy New Year, Kristen.
And many
Happy
more.
New Year to you, too. It's been a while since I saw you guys. I saw you at the RNC summer meeting out in Boston. So it's been a couple of months. It's a lot colder, so sorry to hear that. But
It is. Now, I want to mention something about Kirsten, and this is something that, it's going to sound a little fluffy, but I'm going to say it anyways right up front. Okay. One of the things that I've noticed, because I've met you several times, I've covered several events that you were at, and one of the things that has impressed me the most about you is that you have never shied away from an interview. You're always, whether it's a good situation, whether it's a tough situation, you always make time. Sometimes you have to wait a little while if you're in the middle of something, like at the RNC thing, but you always make time for a few minutes to talk and answer a few questions. And I want to say, right up front, that's very much appreciated.
Well, no, it's my pleasure. I enjoy just ask my father and mother. I love talking. But no, you're always good to me, and there are always good questions, and it's always important to get out there and spread the message of, again, conservative values and Republican values, in particular in Massachusetts.
Now, before we get into some of the meat and potatoes questions, obviously I have a lot of listeners who are from other states who, hearing chairman of the Massachusetts GOP, has to be shaking their heads. Can you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself? I mean, you're about to finish your first year as chairperson. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in politics and Massachusetts politics.
Sure. Well, I started in Massachusetts Republican politics as a 12-year-old stuffing envelopes for then Governor Bill Wells. Yeah. I just kind of grew up in sort of the Reagan Republican era, and was always interested in history and politics as a kid. And so, as I said, I came about in the Reagan era, and felt that he was really a great leader for the country at that time. And then I think that the sort of Republican Party chose me at that time. And then I think later in life, as I got older and started to work, started to make money, to pay taxes, to see what's happening in our country and in our state today, I chose the party because I believe it's the party that best represents my values and the values that my parents instilled in us: hard work, doing for others, and really maintaining that sense of American freedom. So that being said, I ended up, I could never decide as a kid whether I wanted to play the first woman president or be the first woman president. So that sort of playing one on TV won out, and I was an actor for a long time. I went to NYU for musical theater, sang for the Walt Disney Company, did a lot of theater, and decided, I just had more to give and wanted to do more with my life. Ended up going to law school back here in Boston, and but had always been politically active, politically involved. In 2006, worked at the party, helping on the Carrie Healy race, and just stayed after that at the party, working, finance, doing fields, doing a lot of different things. More recently, in the 2012 cycle, I was Senator Brown's deputy finance director, and we raised a lot of money in that campaign. Senator Brown worked really hard. Unfortunately, as we know, was ultimately unsuccessful, and I just felt like I'm tired of seeing people like Elizabeth Warren, Deval Patrick get reelected, get elected, and I wanted to try to make a difference here in Massachusetts. I think we have a great opportunity to do that in 2014, and so I decided to run for the chairman's position, and ultimately was successful. It was a tough race, and I had, a good opponent, but was ultimately successful, and I'm just finishing out my first year, and I feel like, after some special election victories and some new things that we've been really working on hard at the party, that we have, again, a great opportunity in 14 to take back our state and to make a difference here in Massachusetts.
Now, I want to get back to, I want to take this in a little bit of a sequence. Now, you got the election where you were elected was just about a year ago. I believe it was the end of January, beginning of February.
Yeah.
Now, it was a tough election. It went to a second ballot. There was trouble at the vote, and then the very next day, Senator Brown decides not to run in the special election. So that's got to be, your first 48 hours had to be the toughest 48 hours of an incoming chairperson in any party anywhere. Yet you stuck through it, and as you said, we won some special elections, not the Senate one, unfortunately, but in fact, we won a special election just last week, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Sean Dooley won a special election to take over for Dan Winslow, who had exited that seat to go into the private sector. Dan Winslow held the seat that Richard Ross had formerly held, that Scott Brown had formerly held. So it was a GOP seat to begin with. So we were thrilled that Sean decided to step up. He's the former Norfolk town clerk. Decided to step out, ran for the seat, and beat out I think it's 60 or 61% of the vote now. I'm probably making a slight mistake on the number, but about definitely 61% of the vote in a three-way race. So he did a phenomenal job, just really hard work. And it's hard to get those votes out in the cold January, as we know. And so it's tough. But we've been steadily working on our ground game and really investing a lot of money and resources in our get out the vote strategy. First, targeting voters, finding our voters, and then getting those people out to vote for us on Election Day.
Now, we've got about 90 seconds before our next break. When you had the big event, when we had the GOP meeting here in Massachusetts, and people from other states, more competitive states, meet you, how do they react when they know you're fighting in a state that's so blue? Is it like, yeah, you're the chairperson here, or boy, my condolences? Or what kind of attitude do they come in preconceived concerning Massachusetts and Republicans?
Well, it's interesting. There's a couple of things. We may not have Republicans in our congressional delegation, and we certainly have a low, percentage of Republican voters compared to some states, but compared to a lot of states. But we raise a significant amount of money for Republican candidates out of the Northeast, in particular in Massachusetts. So we're respected in that way for sure. And of course, we've had some of the most successful Republicans in these past couple of years. If you look at, again, Senator Brown, whose historic victory was really a game changer there for against Obama's agenda in 2010, and of course our presidential nominee, Mitt Romney, former governor of Massachusetts. So they definitely have a respect for Massachusetts, but they definitely feel that they want to try to help us turn the tide here, and there's a real commitment on the part of not only other chairs and other committee persons that I see, but on the part of the National Party and Ryan Priebus, who is our chairman.
And we'll continue with that thought when we come back. This is the Tech Guy on the Radio, a cameo production on FTR Radio and the Money Matters Radio Network. And we're back with our guest, Kirsten Hughes, the chair of the Massachusetts GOP. Now, Kirsten, in a state where we've got 11% GOP registration.
Yes.
Obviously, job one is to build the party, build the base. Now, part of the base, that the big national debate has been between the base of the party, the establishment party versus the Tea Party and such. But I've noticed that you have been at events pushing both. For example, when you were protesting the forever gas tax increase, you had Mary Lotz with you, who's involved in both the Tea Party and the Fitchburg Republican committee. How has the ability to draw both Tea Party and establishment Republicans been for you?
Well, I see with the party that has an 11% registration, there's really no room to kick people out of the tent. That's just not something that anybody has the option to do. So it's about finding common ground with everyone within the party, right? There are certain topics on which people can disagree within our party. It happens on the other side of the aisle. But at the end of the day, it's important to recognize that we hold those core Republican values as dear as the next Republican. And if you have an R after your name, I'm going to support you. If you're for lowering taxes, building jobs back, making Massachusetts a better place to live, work, and make folks want to stay, raise their family, build their business, then you're a Republican. And I'm going to work hard for you to win. I'm going to work hard with those activists that believe in those things. And there are a lot of issues where, frankly, people disagree, and that's okay. But again, on those core Republican principles, I think that we can all agree, that electing an Elizabeth Warren or a Deval Patrick or a state where Democratic power is unchecked, unfettered, and has done nothing to help the lives of Massachusetts residents, that we have to come together. And I believe that whether you identify yourself as a Tea Party person, as a conservative, as a moderate Republican, as a liberal Republican, you believe that to be true, and so that we're all working together. And I believe that spirit is out there. If it didn't exist in the past, so be it. People have moved on, and they're about electing Republicans in 14 and beyond.
Now, it's funny you mention that because you talk about the Democratic power, and a great example of this came up this week. You called on the governor to ask for the resignation of Carlos Enriquez. And for those of my listeners who don't know, Carlos Enriquez is a member of the Democratic House of Representatives. I think he's in the 6th Suffolk District. He was charged last year with assault and battery and kidnapping of a young lady and was convicted this year. He was charged, still reelected, and then convicted. And to my knowledge, he has not yet resigned. You called upon the governor to resign. How hard is it in a state where you can have something like this happen and a representative on the party, the other side is so strong he doesn't feel compelled to resign instantly, or the governor doesn't feel compelled to ask him to resign instantly?
So they have his back.
Isn't
that's got to be frustrating as can be?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I mean, again, this is just a classic example of how one-party rule run riot has not benefited Massachusetts. You have, Carlos Enriquez is only one example in a long line of disgraced state representatives on the Democratic side. You look at somebody like Rep. Solo. You look at somebody, like a Sal Macy. 3 indicted House speakers here in Massachusetts, and again, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's what you see happening up on Beacon Hill. So I'm not surprised that Carlos Enriquez has not decided to resign. In fact, I saw his attorney on TV the other night, and she seemed pretty confident in the fact that he was not thinking about doing that anytime soon. And just the sadness of the fact that the folks in Dorchester who deserve his representation, deserve to have somebody talking for them up on Beacon Hill. They're not going to have that right now, and he, in his arrogance, refuses to step down. I think that's sad. That's not justice. How does that help anyone? So it does get frustrating, but again, we have to keep calling these folks out, and every time we do that, it adds up, and it drives the point home that we have to elect Republicans at every level of state and federal government here in Massachusetts for balance. Balance is very important here. And again, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's just, Enriquez is just one example in a long line of them.
And just to make sure that our listeners make it clear, he's actually been convicted and sentenced to jail.
Yeah, 6.
I mean, this isn't a person
yeah.
who's just been accused now. He's been convicted and sentenced. And we keep hearing about the Republican war on women, yet we have a guy state rep who has actually assaulted a woman, and you have the chair of the Republican Party in Massachusetts, who happens to be a woman, calling for his resignation, and the governor
won't do it. He was sentenced Wednesday to 6 months in jail. That was what happened there. According to police, he choked and punched Catherine Gonzalez in the summer of 2012. That was took her for a ride, took her cell phone. She drove her to Boston, and she was able to escape the vehicle and call police. And that's what
it boggles the mind. Now, Joe, you had a question as a former GOP candidate here in this state.
Well, the opportunity as chairman of the GOP, what would you say to someone who wants to make a run as a Republican their first time out? What is the infrastructure in place for candidates or prospective candidates to run, and they come to the GOP? Is there an interview process? Are there certain questions that you ask? What can they expect from the GOP as far as any monies at all? Databases, mailing lists, training on how to run a campaign. What steps would you take if you are looking at what's going on and say, you know what, I'm settled in my career and my family's good, and I think I can make a change. I can make a difference here. I want to run for a local rep or local state senate. What do they do, and what's there to help them?
More than ever before. If you're coming, we made, as I spoke about earlier, we've made a significant investment in a database work and targeting voters, really unprecedented level of ability to micro-target voters who will vote for our candidates, and giving them the ability to get those folks to the polls for them on Election Day. We have a great team at the Mass GOP. I hired on a new executive director, a guy named Rob Cunningham, who's a veteran down in the South Shore and Cape area in running local races, state reps, state senate campaigns. Joe, at my office, our political director, is Joe Dorian, and he is working with candidates, meeting with candidates. All you have to do is
Kirsten, we're coming up against a break, but we'll let you finish that thought after.
Yeah, we're gonna. The clock is unforgiving.
Unforgiving. That's how we pay the bills.
We're back with Kirsten Hughes, by the way, and I'm going to tell you something that you don't know. That you're going to be surprised and pleased to hear. I've talked to a lot of people, as you can guess. In my job, I talk to a lot of people here in Massachusetts who are conservatives, and I haven't heard a person say a bad thing about you over your year as chairperson here in the party. I've talked to Tea Party people.
You have a good.
I've talked to establishment people. I've talked to candidates. And you did not know this, but I figured I would tell you this. I have not had a person say a bad word about you.
Well,
and given how things started, I think that's very, very impressive.
Well, thanks. Maybe they don't know me well yet. No, that's very nice. But we've had a great time getting around Massachusetts, crisscrossing the state, going around. My favorite folks out, I'm sorry to say this, I'm from Quincy, but my favorite folks to visit are out in the Pittsfield area. I don't get a lot of visitors out there, so Republicans out.
Oh, you're a big deal when you go out there, Kirsten, huh?
Well, they're very generous.
Yeah.
They're good people, so everybody should have an opportunity to run out to the Pittsfield area and visit the Berkshire County GOP.
It's a beautiful area out there, too. The mountains and it's gorgeous part of the state.
Now, that's something I want to bring up again. One of the things that impressed me was when they were and we've talked about this on the show before, the Massachusetts law that was passed, again, with overwhelming Democrat support, automatically linking our gas tax to inflation, so it automatically goes up. And we now have a ballot question coming up on the ballot. You were all over the state. You weren't just, in front of the cameras in Boston and then gone. You were in Gardner. You went all around the state, standing with both standard Republicans and Tea Party people, holding signs and talking to people about this gas tax hike. And gas tax linked to inflation, so that the Democrats in the state not only never have to vote for it again, but could vote for repeal and have it fail and then claim, oh, well, we voted for repeal when they put it in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's just completely taxation without representation. I was happy to go around and do that small tour of, like I said, like you said, in Gardner and out there talking to folks on all sides of our party. And, I was happy to do it. And hopefully we're going to tank the forever gas tax in 14. And, I'm happy. I'm running up against a little bit of a personal clock here.
Okay, so we're going to go fast. 2014, GOP, Massachusetts. What should we be looking for?
I think you're going to have to look for some wins. I think we've got some excellent rising stars in terms of state reps, and certainly Charlie Baker, Karen Polito. We're going to have a bunch of statewide candidates announcing soon, and I feel good. I feel strong. I feel like our party's all rowing on the same boat in the right direction, and that boat is definitely not the Titanic. So we are strong. We're on the move, and I feel like we're going to see some victories in 14. But I need everyone's help, and doing forums like this and talking to as many Republicans as I can is a real help. So I appreciate you guys having me on today.
And let me mention something to the people listening across the country, because we know there's a lot of races across the country that you might think are well worth your time and money. But every dollar you spend in Massachusetts helps pin down Democrats who would otherwise be spending their money and time in other states trying to defeat you from their war chests that they build up here. So it is worthwhile to help us out to try and take back the state from the grassroots down. Kirsten Hughes, I want to thank you again so much for being on and giving us so much of your time. One last thing, where should people go online if they want more information?
If you go to massgop.com, and click there, take a look. We've got a new revamped website. It's exciting, very interactive. There's a lot of stuff going on. We're going to have a big training coming up in February in Marlborough, and you'll find information about that there on the website. And I look forward to meeting and seeing everybody there, and to seeing you all very soon, hopefully.
Well, hopefully. Thank you again for coming on and giving us so much of your time.
All right. No, thank you, guys. Take care. Have a great day.
You too. Kirsten Hughes, chairperson of the Mass GOP.